Just point of clarification, during the last negotiation, for budget purposes, we tried to incentivize people telling us early by putting a December 15th date. And the incentive was a day to get, one of the arguments has always been, it takes a while to get this paperwork ready and in place for the retirement with the State Retirement Board.
Correct.
So what we did was trade off a day to go do that versus early notification. And it's a good theory, but there were no takers. So we had hoped there might be, because that was the argument that we were engaged in, that we could use some time to do that. We said, okay, call us early and we'll sponsor the time. But there were no takers, just to clarify what Jack's talking about there.
There are still those folks that are holding out for some kind of early retirement package. They would like to think that.
When was the last time you had an early retirement package?
Before my time, so I don't know the answer.
Long
Your
time?
time?
Your time.
Long
Long
time
time.
I know, in the dark ages. I know we had one in my dark ages, but that was a long time ago. Way back when people said.
So I want to say that it's been more than 14 or 15 years.
It's been a long time.
Wow.
Okay. So just to kind of bring all of that together, what I've done is to provide you with a breakdown by cost center of what each of the budgets are looking like. And you'll note, as I had indicated, that the increase at Joel largely does represent the fact that we saddled them with the bulk of the jobs fund money in terms of personnel, so that's really reflected there. It's reflected there. So their increase is somewhat exaggerated.
Is that why on the next page, the certified salaries is that big of an increase as well? Because the jobs money isn't in that number as well. So, yeah.
Because we had hoped to spread it over 2 years and couldn't.
So the jobs fund is how much?
380.
So really,
383.
the amount change should be that number 471 minus 380.
Yeah, the real change would be about realistically 2.75.
Or less than that.
Or less with retirements, but between the job fund money and this will now be in the second year of the contract. Again,
To make sure we clarify that, it looks like a big percentage increase for certified salaries, and in reality, that reflects the jobs money that we used last year. Artificially lowered that salary.
which is why I wanted to really start tonight with what the budget includes, so people you all to start with, but then we kind of have a frame of reference going forward. Thank you.
Well, it's like the grants that we were talking about that are really understood.
Yeah, but what they see is on paper.
Right, exactly. Which is what
Regardless of how many times you explain it, what they see is what they're going to repeat.
Okay, so I think this summary is pretty self-explanatory in terms of except the Joel one. This reflects what you heard ultimately by each of those presentations and where those numbers are really coming from. And again, when you look at the other area that has a significant increase is in our district-wide, and that is largely your health insurance, transportation costs, or the overall employee benefit package and transportation. Okay. So again, overall, we're looking at just under 2% on this initial blush based on what we included. The next page gives you a breakout by objects, and our objects, before we get any further, on the next 2 pages or 3 pages, gives you a brief explanation of what each of those objects include. And this is important to take a look at because there are some things, certified salaries, for example, that are very straightforward. It's basically all of our certified folks, from my salary to classroom teachers. All of the people who have to be certified by the state of Connecticut are included here. The non-certified are all, it's everybody else, but what has, over the years, what has also been included in the non-certified salary line item are monies for the unsettled contracts and degree changes, and services for the gifted and talented, and monies for substitutes, both certified and para-substitutes. Okay, so that's just, so there are some of these objects that this is consistently what we have done, or what the district has done in terms of categorizing, so it's a consistent playing field. But it's important for you to make sure you understand that, or that we all understand that non-certified contains a few other things. And as you read down through, you'll see that, you know, most of them are pretty straightforward, but we do break out, for example, utilities and fuel for heat. Those are two separate items. We also break out transportation by general regular ed and special ed transportation, summer school transportation, and then our transportation for field trips and athletic trips. So those are two separate numbers. Okay? I think most of the other ones are pretty self-explanatory, but you know, certainly if you have any questions about any of the descriptions here, because this last year was the first time that we tried to include that to help people understand it. It seemed to be useful. We've refined it a little further this year to make sure that it's cleaned up even a little further, and just kept it specific to the objects. So backing up then to those actual the line items, as we look at those, Jerry has already pointed out that the certified salaries reflect a 3.17% increase. Again, you know, in theory, you take away $383,000, then that increase is, you know, considerably small. But you know, that chunk was a one-time budget benefit for us last year that were, unless we were to reduce staffing that up to that amount, that's what we're looking at. Certified staff, again, or I'm sorry, non-certified staff, largely that is reflects the contractual agreements for each of the bargaining units, and that is pretty much on target. That 2.2% reflects that pretty evenly. Employee benefits, again, even though this is still a big chunk, that's a little bit lower than what we've been able to, or what we've done in the past, with the exception of last year where we had a 0% in the budget. So previous years, you remember, we were $500,000 or $600,000 for employee benefits as an increase. So we're trending much better. I think as you go down through, you'll see a couple areas. I've already mentioned that, you know, generally speaking, because transportation reflects both regular and special ed, you'll see that reduction. However, the athletic field trips offset some of that, so it's really only a total of $9,000 change. We've been able to reduce our liability and property insurance. Kevin's done a nice job in playing with that. Our advertising and printing, we've been able to reduce as part of our work with our photocopying machine, our photocopying contracts and our printing contracts. Tuition, that's largely reduction in special ed. And our fuel for heat, this is really as part of the fixed contract costs we've had with our gas company. Again, the prices have been good, worked in our favor.